What's going on, guys? Balkan Architect here, and in today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you these 10 amazing tools that every Revit beginner should know and learn how to use. Now, when it comes to learning Revit as a beginner, I basically knew just a few things. I got started, and then as I started to learn more complex things, there is every now and then that I would learn about a tool or a feature of Revit that would just make me stop, and I would be like, come on, if I just knew about this like 10 months ago, it would have made my life so much easier and so many less headaches when it comes to working in Revit. So I decided to compile a list of 10 tools that are really good time savers, or they make a task less of a headache or something like that. So I decided to make this list of 10 tools that every Revit beginner should learn how to use. Okay, before we get into that list or a tutorial or presentation, I would just like to ask you to like this video because it helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And also, if you like Revit tutorials, make sure to subscribe because I make a few Revit tutorials each week, and also I make some advanced courses now. If you're interested in checking those out, there I take some time and just kind of in-depth explain the advanced Revit topics. I've got over 50 hours of content. First, a link in the description will take you there, and also there you can find all of my Revit project files. I've got over 500 files so far, so if you want to kind of play around with those, check it out. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into the tutorial. Let's get started with the first tool, and that's the pin in place tool. Now, when you're working on a large project, one feature of Revit that might come in annoying is the fact that you have the option to move elements when selected. So once you click on an element, so for example this dimension line, if I select it and then just hold my mouse key, I can then move it into a different position. Now, there's actually a setting for this which you can turn off if you want, and that's located over here on the modify tool. Below we have the select option, and you can actually open up the drop menu, and then here we have some options to check on. Now, one of those options, and the last one, is drag elements on selection. So what this allows you to do is when select elements, you can drag them. Now, if you turn that off, so if I just uncheck that, if I select this and then try to move it, as you can see, nothing happens. It starts making a drag selection, so that option is turned off. Now, I really find this option quite useful, especially when you're moving elements around. It's really useful to be able to move it organically without having to select it and then move it, just to kind of have those two features come in at once. But it can come in annoying when it comes to moving important elements of the project. Now, one of those elements are the grids. So grids should rarely be moved around, and if you move grids out of place, they can drag out some elements. You get these warnings, and it's a terrible mess. So in order to avoid that, we have our tool that comes in handy. So when you select an element, you can go here to the modify tab, and then on the modify panel we have the pin in place option. Now you can use the PN shortcut, and once you click that, as you can see, now element is pinned in place, and if I try to move it, it doesn't work. So we have secured this element in place. Now, of course, at any point you can unpin it, either by clicking here on this pin to unpin it, or you can go again to the modify panel, and then here we have the unpin option. Also, you have the UP shortcut as well. Okay, moving on to tip number 2, and that has to do with projects such as this, where you have a lot of large elements and then a lot of small elements. If I zoom in over here, you're going to notice that some of these lines are quite thick. And when we take a look at a complex section like this and maybe want to do some detail work, it can be kind of hard to differentiate between elements here because of all of the thick lines. Now, luckily, Revit has a tool that allows you to create thin lines immediately on the spot. So that's over here on the quick access toolbar. We have the thin lines tool, and as you can see, the shortcut is the L. Now, once I click this, as you can see, all of the lines turn thin, and now you can see everything a lot clearer, and you can understand how the whole sketch is constructed and all of the little lines that exist over there. Now keep in mind that once you turn on the thin lines, when you print, it's not going to give you thin lines. It's still going to print like this. So the thin lines option is, or the thin lines tool or toggle, is something to turn on and off while you're working on a project, just because if you want to kind of fine-tune some of the elements, but it's not something that you use to set your project up when it's time to print it out. So when it's time to print, make sure it's turned off so you can get a realistic appearance of what your floor plan or any view is going to look like. Now let's talk about the tool number 3, and that's the temporary dimension, and let's see how can we set it up. So whenever you're working in Revit, if you select one of the elements, you will get these temporary dimensions. So you can see these blue dimensions. Now, the problem with these is they can kind of be set up the wrong way out of the box. So when you install Revit, just out of the box, they're going to be set up like this. So as you can see, this temporary dimension is measuring from the center line of the wall, so from the center of this wall to the center of this wall. Now, that's usually not a dimension that you want to see. Usually, a more important dimension is from the interior side of the wall to the other interior side of the wall, and that's what's actually going to be informing on your design process. So in order to change these temporary dimensions, you can do it manually by selecting this witness line, just by hitting this button here, selecting it, and then you can move it either to the center line, or if you use the tab key, you can toggle selection to either this face of the wall, or maybe the outside face of the wall, or pretty much anywhere else on the project. But if you want to maybe automate this a little bit better, you have a second option, and that's to go here to the Manage tab, go to Additional Settings, and then here on the bottom we have the temporary dimensions, and this allows you to set those temporary dimensions up. So here we have the temporary dimensions measure from, and here for walls that we want to measure from center lines, from center of core, or from faces or faces of core. So in most cases you want to measure from the outside face to the outside face, so you would select this option over here. Also, you can measure the center line for doors and windows, or you can measure the whole openings, and I prefer that. So I tend to keep my settings set to faces and then here openings, and once you click OK, now if I select this wall, as you can see, it's measuring from the face to the face, and the same thing here, from this outside face to this inside face over here, which is exactly what you want to have. The next tool that I'm going to be showing you is my favorite tool because it's so satisfying to use, and that's going to be the Align tool. So if I switch here to the Modify tab, or if you select any of the elements, you will get the Modify tab, and there we have the Modify panel. Now on the Modify panel, we have the Align tool, and as you can see, the shortcut is AL, so you can use that as well. So once you select this Align tool, what it allows you to do is to, well, align elements together. So first you select the element to which you want to align. So the main element, in this case, let's select this wall over here, the exterior face, and then you select the element that you want to align it with, or that you want to align up to that point. And in this case, let's select this face over here. And as you can see, it immediately jumps up and it aligns perfectly with that wall. And also a great feature about this tool is the fact that you get this little lock icon, and if you lock that in place, it creates a constraint. Now, why this constraint is good is if I just hit the escape key a couple of times, if you just move one of these walls, so let's move this one, the other will follow, because as you can see, it's locked in place and it's constrained, and whenever you move one wall, the other wall will follow. So it's really cool in order to kind of lock things together, so that the elements that should be aligned will stay aligned at all times. Now I'm going to be showing you the Join Geometry tool. Now here we have some walls created, and then I have a floor that's just resting on those walls. Now if I decide to create a section through these walls, let's go here to the Section tool, and let's create a section like this. Now to open up a section, you just deselect it first, and then you just click twice or just double click on this section head. So if I just double click, it opens up that section. Now here down, I'm going to set the detail level from coarse to fine. And as you can see here, we have those floors and those walls. And the problem is here this line work. So it appears that these two elements are kind of going through each other, and it usually doesn't look like that in real life. And you don't want to have a graphical representation like this. So what can we do to fix this problem is to use the Join Geometry tool. What the Join Geometry tool allows you to do is to merge these elements together, not only graphically, but also you don't want Revit to be calculating this part of the wall because that's not going to be existing. So you don't have any concrete here, for example, because this is a floor over here. So you want to make sure that the calculations at the end are going to be correct, and also you want the graphical appearance to be a bit better. So what you need to do is you need to go here to the Modify tab, and then here we have the Geometry panel, and here we have the Join Geometry tool. And now if I click that, I just need to click one element, I click the second element, and as you can see, they merge together. Now we can do the same thing here, same thing here, and the same thing on the other side. And as you can see, now this looks a lot better. The next tool that I'm going to be showing you is the tool that allows you to hide elements. Now, when you're working in Revit, you can select any element, and here we have this temporary hide isolate, and you can just hide that element. Now, the problem with this is you get this blue outline, which is kind of annoying. And if you restart this project, you maybe shut your computer down and then you start it up in a couple of days to continue working, this will not be hidden, so it will kind of reset automatically. So a more permanent way of hiding elements would be to select the element, and then here you have the option to go to the View panel, and then we have this little light bulb and it says Hide in View. Now when you open up the drop menu, it has the option to hide either the element or the category. Now let's just hide this element, and as you can see, EH is the shortcut, and once you click that, that element will be hidden. Now, if at any point you want to see where are all of the hidden elements, you have that same light bulb here on the bottom. So once you click that, that light bulb, it goes into Reveal Hidden Elements mode, and you can select any element, and then you can just unhide it in view by going here to this unhide option, or type in EU. So I'm just going to unhide that, and then I'm just going to turn off this Reveal Hidden Elements view. The next tool that I'm going to be showing you can prove really useful because it allows you to kind of use Revit in a way that you used to use AutoCAD if you're coming in from the AutoCAD environment. So here on the Annotate tab, we have the Detail Line tool. DL is the shortcut. So this basically allows you to place lines. Now here you can choose the line style from some of the line styles that are offered here, and here we have some draw tools. Now you can do lines, create rectangles, maybe inscribed polygons, circles, arcs, and so on and so forth. You can even create cool splines. So you just come in here to the model, and then you start creating regular lines. Now I can create maybe an interesting spline like this, switch back to the regular line, close it off, and there you go. Now I'm just going to hit the escape key a couple of times. Now this is a really cool way to add maybe some details to the model that are maybe a bit too complicated to model and maybe are not necessary to model. Just make sure that you don't overuse this tool, because remember, at any time if you go into 3D, those elements are not going to be visible. Those are only 2D elements which are visible only in views in which they're created. And one more thing, these lines that you can change here in the Align Style dialog, you don't really have many options, but if you want to add more options, at any point you can go here to the Manage tab, go to Additional Settings, and then here we have the Align Styles dialog, and I'm just going to open that up, expand the menu, and here, as you can see, we have all of the line styles, and you can create new subcategories and just customize the color as well as the line pattern to your will. And here you can customize the line thickness. You can change it anywhere from 1 to 16. Just keep in mind that 16 is really thick. And let me just cancel out of that. The next tool also has a lot to do with detailing, and it's something that I didn't know for a long time and I found really annoying with Revit, and that's the fact that if I zoom in here at this wall, we have this thermal layer, so that's this layer over here, and usually for thermal layers in architecture projects, you have that batting line. It's a very characteristic wavy line. Now, we don't really have that appear in our walls, even though the detail level is set to fine, and this material is set to insulation, but we can add that by going here to the Annotate tab, and then we have the insulation batting line. So you just click here on this line, and then you can add the line here. Now, usually how I like to add these is to go here first to the measure tool, measure the distance between two layers. As you can see, it's 7.6 centimeters. Hit the escape key, then go back to the insulation tool, and then here for the insulation width, I would type that number in, so 7.6, and then here I will hit apply, and also on this side it says to center. Now I like to change that to near side, so that's going to make it easier to place. So instead of placing it on the center, and it's hard to pinpoint the center of this, you would go to the near side, and then you can just come to this line, perhaps over here, and then as you can see, if you start creating the line, it will add that insulation batting line. Now, of course, you can maybe change it, and of course, if you change the scale down to something smaller, it might look a bit nicer. So as you can see, as the lines are thinner, this will look better. So that's how you add insulation lines. In this video, I'm going to be showing you a tool that's really cool to use because it actually changes the graphics or what your model actually looks like in your views. So here in this 3D view, when I have nothing selected, and this is for all views, when nothing is selected, in the properties you get view properties. Now that's why we have the 3D view, that's the name of the view. Now for the view properties, we have this visibility graphic overrides option. Now if I click here on edit, and you can get to the same menu by clicking on the VG shortcut or the VV shortcut, here we have, as you can see, model categories, then annotational categories, and so on and so forth. Now for each of these categories, you can scroll down and find a specific category. For example, in this case, let's select roofs. And for this category, you can override the lines, the patterns, the transparency of projection or surface. So that's in 3D view or in elevation view, or you also have the cut. So that's, for example, in the floor plan, the walls are being cut, or in a section, both the floors and and maybe the walls and the roofs are being cut, and then that's the cut projection. So here in this case, let's play around with the projection view and let's override the pattern of this roof. So I'm just going to change the pattern to solid fill, and then the color to something like this, very light red. Click OK, click OK again, apply, and then click OK, and now as you can see, the roof has turned red. So you can pretty much customize the colors of everything. Now keep in mind that this only works in this view. If you switch to any other view, maybe here the south or north elevation, as you can see, that roof is still white. So only in the view where we have made that change, the change has been applied. And finally, for our 10th tool, I'm going to be showing you one of the tools that was my favorite in AutoCAD, and it's still one of my favorites here in Revit, and that's the option to group elements together. So for example, in a lot of cases, you're going to have a problem where you have a few elements that you're kind of copying around, moving around, and it's usually easier to work with it as a singular element. For example, I have this desk, and then I have this desk chair. And it would be really cool if there were just one element and not two separate elements, because if I want to move them around, I may accidentally select another element, and then I don't want to move this section, so it's really annoying. So what I like to do is I like to position everything correctly. So this is how I want this to look. Then I'm going to hold the Control key to add to selection, and then select the desk, select the desk chair, and then I'm just going to go here to the Modify tab, go to the Create panel, and then here we have the Create Group option. GP is the shortcut for that. Now you can name this, so I'm just going to call it Desk with Chair. Click OK, and there we go. We have our group, and now I can just move the whole group around, making it a lot easier for myself. And at any point, you can go here to edit group when it's selected, and you can maybe add some elements or remove elements like the chair, for example, or add. So let's add the chair, so you can just play around with that group. Now I'm just going to cancel out this change, and yes, I do want to I do want to dismiss all of the changes made. So there you go, that was the tip number 10. Okay, so that concludes these 10 tools that every beginner should learn in Revit. It's going to make your workflow a lot faster, and it's going to make working in Revit a lot easier. I hope you have found these interesting, and I hope you have learned something new. Now, again, as I said in the beginning of the tutorial, if you want to download any of these project files, check out my Patreon, first link in the description. There you can also find all of my advanced courses. I've got over 50 hours of content on numerous important Revit topics. So if you're interested, check it out. First link in the description leads you there. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share this video. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for any future tutorials, make sure to leave them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.